My name is Marjorie Hayes, and at 68 years old, I thought I had already experienced every kind of heartbreak life could hand me. But nothing prepared me for the moment a wedding coordinator pointed to a folding chair near the service station and said, "Your seat is in row 14, Mrs. Hayes." Row 14, behind the photographers, behind the floral crew, almost behind the curtains. For the mother of the groom. People around me wore diamonds in tailored suits. Champagne flutes chimed softly, and the entire hall shone with the elegance that came from old money. Lydia Hartman, my future daughter-in-law, stood near the front draped in luxury, her posture straight, her eyes briefly flicking toward me with a cold kind of approval. Her mother, Vivian, whispered something into her ear and both women gave the smallest smile, a smile that always felt like a verdict. When I looked toward my son Luke, he lowered his gaze, no defense, no question. He simply let it happen. I walked to row 14 with my chin lifted though my heart felt like it was folding in on itself. I sat, smoothing the navy dress I had worn countless times before, suddenly aware of every worn seam, every faded thread. Whispers floated down the aisle. "Is that his mother?" I heard she worked at a senior center. I guess she does not fit their crowd. I kept my hands in my lap, steadying my breath. I reminded myself that I had raised my son alone after my husband Daniel died. I reminded myself that love does not need pearls or estates to be real, but the truth still stung. Then a chair beside me slid quietly. A man sat down, calm and confident, the kind of presence that made people turn without knowing why. His silver hair caught the light. He smelled faintly of cedar and citrus. He leaned closer and said softly, "Let us pretend we came together." My breath caught. I looked at him fully and felt a shock of recognition rise from somewhere deep in my past. Benjamin Carlyle, my first love, the one I lost half a century ago. Suddenly row 14 did not feel like a punishment anymore. It felt like the beginning of something none of us saw coming. When the ceremony ended, guests drifted toward the garden terrace in clusters of polished laughter and clinking glasses. I stayed seated for a moment, unsure whether my legs would even carry me. Benjamin waited beside me without speaking, his presence steady, as a hand on my back. "Come with me for a walk," he finally said. "Just a few minutes." I nodded, unable to form words. We stepped into the garden where lanterns hung from low branches, their light trembling in the evening breeze. The air smelled of roses and fresh-cut grass, but something heavier pressed around us, like memories rising through the dark. "I thought you had forgotten me," I whispered. Benjamin's eyes softened. "I never forgot you, Marjorie. I looked for you for years." He told me about the letters he wrote from overseas, dozens of them, sent faithfully until he received notice that I had moved away with no forwarding address. His voice tightened when he said it, the old confusion still living somewhere behind his calm exterior. "My mother hid those letters," I said quietly. "She believed you were not a good match. Too ambitious, too unpredictable. She wanted me to choose a safer life." He inhaled slowly, like he had always suspected the truth but never dared claim it. "And did you?" he asked. "Did you choose a safe life?" I thought of Daniel, the gentleman who became my husband, our quiet home. The years of steady routines. Love without spark, but full of loyalty. "I chose a good man," I said. "A patient one. But not the one I once imagined a whole world with." Benjamin smiled, sad and warm. "I never married," he said. "I could not hand pieces of myself to someone else when I never stopped holding on to you." The words struck something deep, something I thought had died long ago. 50 years had passed, yet standing there under the lanterns it felt like only a chapter had turned, not the whole story. And for the first time that day, my heart began to breathe again. We were still standing beneath the lanterns when hurried footsteps broke the quiet. Luke and Lydia were crossing the lawn toward us, their expressions tight and urgent. Lydia's dress snagged in the grass, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on Benjamin with a sharpness that felt like a warning. "Who are you exactly?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the evening air. "This is a family event, not a place for uninvited guests." Benjamin did not flinch. He simply straightened his posture, his presence cooling the space around us. "I am someone who once mattered to Marjorie," he said evenly. Lydia scowled, ready to fire back, but Luke stepped forward, uncertainty clouding his face. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you were bringing someone?" I felt the old instinct rising in me, the one that always pushed me to soothe, to minimize, to keep peace at my own expense. But Benjamin spoke first. Because your mother does not need permission to be treated with dignity. Luke's eyes widened. Lydia's lips parted in disbelief. Benjamin continued, calm but unwavering. I watched her sit alone in the back row today. I watched her endure what no parent should endure at their child's wedding. It was a seating mix-up, Luke blurted too quickly. No one meant anything by it. Benjamin tilted his head. Is that the explanation you are comfortable giving her? Silence pressed against all of us. Lydia found her voice again, sharper this time. Look, this event is important for our family. Appearances matter. Some things are better managed quietly. Managed. The word landed like an insult. Benjamin's tone cooled. Interesting choice of phrasing, Miss Hartman. Especially considering that Hartman Realty now leases its headquarters in a building owned by my company. Both of them froze. Luke blinked hard. What did you say? I stepped a little closer to Benjamin, feeling the balance of things shift in real time. He met their stunned faces with measured calm. I believe that is a conversation best had when respect is part of the table. And just like that, the evening was no longer theirs to control. 3 days passed before I heard from Luke again. His voice on the phone was unusually formal, as if he were preparing for a meeting instead of speaking to his mother. Mom, Lydia and I would like to take you to dinner, Riverstone House, 7 o'clock. Riverstone House was not a place people chose for casual meals. It was where executives negotiated mergers and families discussed inheritances. The invitation told me everything. This was not about mending hearts. This was about something they wanted. Still, I agreed. Sometimes facing the truth requires walking right into the room where it hides. The restaurant was dim and elegant, the kind of space where voices softened automatically. Lydia stood when I arrived, smiling the tight smile she used at charity events. Marjorie, we are so glad you came. I took my seat. Luke avoided my eyes as he reached for his water glass. We wanted to talk about family, he said, about staying close. Lydia folded her hands on the table, the diamonds on her fingers catching the light. We also heard something recently, about Carlyle Holdings acquiring our building. Such a coincidence. There it was. Her tone was sweet, but fear pulsed beneath every word. Losing that space would crush their company. We were hoping you might speak to Mr. Carlyle, she continued, steadying her breath. Encourage him to consider a long-term partnership. It would help all of us. I sat very still. For years I had let myself shrink in moments like this, but not tonight. Luke, Lydia, I said softly, when you placed me in the back row at your wedding, that was not a business decision. That was a choice about respect. And now you want something from the same person who refused to watch you diminish me. Lydia stiffened. That was a misunderstanding. No, I replied, it was a revelation. Before either could answer, the door opened. Benjamin stepped in with quiet certainty and took the empty chair beside me. No need for further explanation, he said calmly. We will discuss the lease when dignity is no longer negotiable. Lydia's face drained of color. Luke swallowed hard. For the first time in years, I did not feel small at their table. I felt equal. And that changed everything. The next morning, I was trimming the roses along my front walk when a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and Vivian Hartman stepped out with the measured grace of someone who expected the world to part for her. She approached with a practiced smile. Marjorie, dear, I hope I am not intruding. Vivian Hartman did not hope. Vivian Hartman expected. I led her to the living room. She sat upright on the edge of the sofa, her purse resting on her lap like a symbol of authority. Without any preamble, she opened it and slid a crisp envelope across the coffee table. Inside was a check for $50,000. Her voice was smooth, almost kind. This is not a bribe, she said. Think of it as a gesture of appreciation. If you could speak to Mr. Carlyle and encourage him to maintain our lease, it would prevent unnecessary disruption for our employees. I am sure you want what is best for your family. I studied her. The pearls around her neck. The perfect hair. The confidence of a woman who believed money could smooth anything, even disrespect. I lifted the check. The paper was thick, expensive, almost heavy. Vivian watched me closely, waiting for the moment I would thank her and fold myself into obedience. Instead, I tore the check in half. Then again, and again, until the pieces lay scattered like pale confetti on the table. Vivian's composure cracked for the first time. Her eyes tightened. That was unwise, Marjorie. I stood and opened the front door. Doing the right thing often looks unwise to people who measure worth in dollars. She rose slowly, gathering her purse. Be careful, she said, her tone cooling. You do not understand the world you are stepping into. I met her gaze. Then maybe it is time I learn it on my own terms. She left without another word, the echo of her heels fading down my walkway. The roses behind me smelled sweeter than they had in years. 2 days later, Benjamin called and asked if I could meet him at his downtown office. His voice was steady, but there was a quiet seriousness behind it that made me set aside everything else. When I arrived, the receptionist guided me to a conference room with tall windows overlooking the city. Benjamin stood when I entered. Thank you for coming, Marjorie. There is something you should hear directly. Beside him sat a woman in a gray suit, poised and confident. She introduced herself as Claire Eastwood, senior counsel for Carlyle Holdings. Her handshake was firm, her eyes direct but warm. Please sit, Mrs. Hayes, she said, sliding a folder toward me. Mr. Carlyle requested a full review of the Hartman Realty lease. There are several issues that give us legal grounds to make changes. I opened the folder. The pages were filled with terms I did not understand, but Claire spoke with clarity. There are 2 options. First, we can terminate their lease immediately. They are in violation of multiple clauses. This would give them 72 hours to vacate the building. I felt a twist in my stomach. That kind of eviction would devastate their entire company. It was too harsh, too final. Claire continued. The second option allows Hartman Realty to remain, but under revised conditions. Conditions designed to address conduct and accountability. She turned the page to a new list. 1. A written public apology to you, Mrs. Hayes, posted on their website and published in the Business Journal. 2. A guaranteed financial commitment to the Daniel Hayes Scholarship for students with financial need. 5 years minimum. 3. Annual contributions to the Chicago Senior Justice Fund. 4. A mandatory ethics policy requiring respectful treatment of all family members connected to leadership. 5. All revisions must be co-signed by you. I stared at the paper. Not punishment, not revenge. Correction. Benjamin spoke gently. People who treat you as if you belong in the back row need to be reminded that dignity has consequences. My hands trembled slightly as I held the pen. I signed. Not for power. For self-respect? The announcement came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after I signed the revised lease, Hartman Realty hosted their annual charity gala at the Lakeshore Pavilion, an event known for velvet gowns, polished speeches, and carefully curated reputations. But this year, the spotlight would shine on something none of them could control. I arrived quietly, taking a seat near the aisle. I wore a simple gray dress and a pearl pin Daniel had given me on our 10th anniversary. Nothing flashy, nothing borrowed, just something that reminded me of who I had been long before anyone tried to dim my presence. The hall filled with guests holding crystal glasses and conversations floating like smoke, but beneath it all there was a tension, a careful stillness. People knew something was coming. They just did not know what form it would take. When the lights dimmed, Lydia walked onto the stage. Her steps were precise, but the slight tremor in her hands betrayed her composure. Vivian sat in the front row, her jaw set, her eyes tight with restrained irritation. Lydia unfolded a printed statement. The microphone hummed softly. Before tonight's program begins, she said, I am required to make a formal apology. The room went silent. She swallowed hard and continued. On the day of my wedding, I treated my mother-in-law, Mrs. Marjorie Hayes, with disrespect. I allowed concerns about appearance to dictate my behavior. In doing so, I diminished her dignity and her rightful place in our family. My actions were wrong. I offer this apology publicly and without excuse. A ripple moved through the audience. Some eyebrows lifted. Some guests exchanged looks. A few leaned forward, listening more intently than before. Lydia read the remaining commitments aloud, the scholarship in Daniel's name, the donations to the Senior Justice Fund, the new ethics policy. Her voice wavered only once. When she stepped back, the room held its breath. I rose and walked to the stage. Lydia's eyes shifted downward as I approached. I took the microphone. I accept your words, I said. But forgiveness is not a moment. It is the choices we make after the truth is spoken. The silence broke into steady applause, not loud, not showy. Respectful. For the first time in a long time I stood where I should have been all along. After the gala, I expected a day or two of silence. Instead, Luke showed up on my porch the very next morning, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of a man finally ready to stop running from himself. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked. We sat on the porch swing, the wood creaking softly beneath us. He handed me a cup and stared at his shoes for a long moment before speaking. "I let things get out of control," he said quietly. "I let Lydia and her family decide what mattered. I thought keeping the peace meant staying quiet, but all it did was make me smaller. And it hurt you." His voice cracked. I saw the guilt settle into his shoulders, heavier than any business responsibility he carried. I put a hand on his arm. "Luke, you're my son. I've been waiting a long time to hear the truth from you. Not excuses, not deflection, just truth." He nodded, eyes shining. "I'm sorry, Mom, not because of the lease, not because of the apology, because I forgot who taught me how to stand tall in the first place." We sat together for a while, letting the wind fill the silence. Healing does not need speed. It needs honesty. Later that week, Lydia asked to meet me alone. She arrived without makeup, without diamonds, without her usual protective shell. "I'm not here to defend myself," she said. "I just need to say something I should have said a long time ago." She took a shaky breath. "I treated you like an inconvenience, someone to manage, and that was wrong. I grew up thinking appearance was survival, but I hurt people who didn't deserve it." She looked directly at me. "When you come back from Italy, I want to earn your trust, slowly, properly, no pretending." I studied her face. The pride was gone. The fear too. What remained was sincerity, something I had never seen from her before. I nodded. "Trust can grow, Lydia, but only if we water it together." Her eyes filled, but she smiled. "Then I will show up for it, every day." And for the first time I believed she meant it. A few days later, Benjamin called and asked if I could meet him downtown. His voice carried a warmth I had grown familiar with, but there was something else beneath it too. Anticipation. Purpose. He picked me up outside my house and drove toward the lakefront, past the quiet neighborhoods and into an area filled with new construction. We pulled up to a modern glass building still wrapped in scaffolding. "What is this?" I asked. He smiled slightly. "Come and see." Inside, the elevator opened to the top floor. The space was unfinished, but sunlight poured through tall windows, flooding the concrete with gold. The lake shimmered beyond the glass, stretching in a long silver line. "This will be the community wing of our new cultural center," he said, "and there is something here I wanted you to see." He guided me toward a corner of the room where a simple easel stood. On it was a design board showing a reading nook with soft chairs, shelves of children's books, and a warm, welcoming sign. "The Harold and Marjorie Reading Corner." I stopped breathing for a moment, Daniel's name beside mine, not erased, not overshadowed, honored. Benjamin's voice softened. "You spent your life giving knowledge to children who needed it. I wanted that legacy to stand somewhere visible, somewhere that reflects who you are." I touched the edge of the board lightly. It felt like a door opening into a room I never believed I would enter. Then Benjamin turned to me, calm but hopeful. "In 2 months, I need to go to Tuscany for a redevelopment project. It will be a few weeks, maybe longer, and I was wondering if you might want to join me." Italy. The kind of place Daniel and I only talked about in dreams. The kind of place I never thought my feet would touch. I looked out at the lake, at the horizon widening with light. Then I turned back to Benjamin and said quietly, "I want to go." It was the first time in my life I chose the future without fear. As the plane lifted off the runway a few weeks later, Chicago spread out beneath me in a quilt of streets and soft lights. I watched the city grow smaller until it became a memory pressed against the window. But instead of feeling fear or uncertainty, I felt something unexpected. Lightness. For the first time in years, I was not holding myself together for anyone, not for Luke, not for Lydia, not for a world that measured worth by appearance or wealth. I was stepping into a future I chose myself. Italy unfolded beneath us in rolling landscapes and sun-soaked hills. In Tuscany, I walked through vineyards older than any memory I carried. I breathed air that somehow felt like permission, and in the quiet moments, sitting beside Benjamin on a terrace overlooking olive trees, I realized a truth that had taken me a lifetime to learn. Worth is not something others assign to you. It is something you claim for yourself. Respect is not won by silence, it is earned by standing up, even when your voice is soft. And a seat at the table is not a gift, it is a right. When I eventually returned to Chicago, things had changed. Luke greeted me with steadier eyes. Lydia welcomed me with genuine warmth. And the reading corner with my name and Daniel's stood proudly, filled with children discovering worlds and books. My life did not become perfect, it simply became mine. If you are listening to this, I want you to remember something. You deserve to be treated with dignity. You deserve to take up space. And you deserve a life that reflects your worth, not someone else's comfort. If this story spoke to you, tell me where you are watching from. Share a moment when you reclaimed your voice. And if you want more stories of healing, courage, and the quiet strength of choosing yourself, please like, share, and subscribe. Your story matters, and your seat is waiting.